Good morning.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Greg. Hi, Christian.
Hey.
Morning.
Hello.
Yeah, Christian, you want to drive today's meeting? Or Paul, maybe? I mean, I don't have very specific stuff on the agenda.
Irfan, do you know if Quinton's going to join?
I don't think so. I mean, I didn't check with him, but his Fridays are generally busy. That's what I know.
Okay.
But I do know that he would probably be attending the conference. Like, he'll be there.
Yeah, partly the goal of this meeting is to plan for the conference. So maybe you can relay that to him. I mean, it's not, I don't think we're just going to talk here one and done. The plan is to get the ball rolling to, I guess, have milestones for the next at least 6 months so that we can communicate that and partly get some agreement on what we want to present to the community as a SIG.
Yeah, I understand that. And he actually has put that item about different work groups or different subgroups of the SIG. As in, we need to decide what we probably need to plan for next 6 months or a year. So that is basically something which we need to maybe finish in next couple of weeks. Yeah, about what we want to present in the SIG, I am not clear on that at all as of now. So I'm open to suggestions from the folks in the meeting today, and then we can probably take it forward from there.
Okay, I mean, we can go sub-project by sub-project. Some are going to go quicker than others. Let's see. We can give a quick status update on cluster registry, where it's at. My hope is that we'll be able to converge on the namespacing issue. And if and when we do, we should be able to move the API to beta. That's kind of like the last standing thing there. So I can write up the status of that in probably one slide and go over it. On the Google end, we have this kubemci CLI tool. We have a separate session at KubeCon that we're going to talk about it. So there's a talk Greg and Nikhil are going to be at. Again, that's another quick status slide. Then I guess the topic moves to Federation and this V1 and V2, and how do we want to present V1 versus V2?
I had a quick question on kubemci really quick.
Yeah.
The description for the session about it is written in a way that suggests that it will be an API resource and controller and not a CLI. So I'm wondering if that's something that you still plan to do around kubemci.
Greg, do you want to talk about what you guys are?
Yeah, I think that we'll have a controller prototype demoable for kubemci. I mean, that's why we put in the talk that way, and that's still the plan.
Okay.
So some folks are working on that here.
Is that work public at all? I haven't seen things going into the kubemci repo.
In the repo itself, there's been some fair amount of traffic in the last few.
So the kubemci, there's been CLI traffic in the repo. Where do the networking folks stand with their changes?
Yeah, most of the changes have gone into the, I guess it's the Ingress GCE side of things, which is the Google implementation of Ingress. And right now they're working on a CRD. I guess unfortunately the CRD right now is going to be Google specific, like it's a Google extension because it configures a Google parameter from the load balancer. I'd like to have a better story as to how it could apply to any Ingress implementation, but as you know, the part of the main reason Ingress is still in beta compared to all the other core APIs is that the space is so fragmented. So it's kind of it's on the SIG networking right now to try to standardize Ingress to possibly have an Ingress v2. But for this audience here, unfortunately, we don't have a very good generalized story to share right now.
Okay, that's fine. I guess one fundamental question that I had is like whether pushing kubemci in that direction is something Google is still interested in doing. We kind of, and forgive me if I missed like a status update in SIG multi-cluster, but things kind of went dark on that one, and it's been a while since we talked about it. So I was just kind of wondering overall where it stood. I don't mean to derail this meeting, though. So I think that's enough information for now. Thank you.
Okay. I think I can follow up with you in terms of like what where things are headed. Like I'd say, out of that CRD, 90% of that surface area really is specific to the Google implementation, and the people trying to sort that out are not us. They're in the networking group.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you for that. Sorry to derail things.
No, that's fine.
Okay, so we were at Federation next, right?
Yep.
And that is a tricky space. So
I think we have.
yeah, last meeting, which was yesterday, I remember some thoughts were floating like until V2 probably evolves at something which can be published to users. Until that time, maybe we keep the documentation. Main point is because there is documentation existing in Kubernetes official documentation about Federation V1, and we cannot just sort of remove everything from there and do a public announcement saying that we do no longer support it or something like that. Maybe that might also be one way of going about it. But one thought that I had is until V2 evolves at something more stable and something which can be presented to the users, we sort of keep the status quo saying that we are moving towards V2 and that is a work in development. And we no longer are doing any active development on V1. That might be one standpoint that we can give out to the users or the community. How about that?
Yeah, the problem I see with that is if you look at the maturity of core Kubernetes and the documentation around it, like a Kubernetes.io documentation, right now it pretty much reflects what is a GA experience for the user. And as it stands, we're promoting Federation V1 documentation at that same level, which I think is a mistake as it stands. And even if we're working hard to essentially address some of these concerns in V2, we need to fix the user experience for V1 and reflect what the actual status is of V1.
Yeah, I agree. I think that at a minimum, we ought to have some guidance that we put onto the docs site and in the Kubernetes Federation README that educates users about like what the history has been up till now and what the current direction is. Honestly, like as far as I know, like we never considered in Kubernetes for Federation to be any more than alpha. So I don't think there is a huge problem with not directing users to Kubernetes Federation in the interim until V2 is at a point where people can start working on it. Like that is the purpose of alpha, is to be able to break things and do so without having major consequences around we broke some agreement to support something or have backward compatibility around it. So I think at a minimum we do need guidance on the doc site, on Kubernetes IO, anywhere that references it, and in the README. What do people think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. To be specific, I think the README is kind of fine-grained and focuses on what the SIGs efforts are, which I think may escape the Kubernetes user just because there's so many SIGs. It's fine to have something that reflects what we're actually doing. But my main pain point is really the doc site, because like right now we just had a 1.10 release and a 1.9 release, and these are two opportunities where we keep reflecting a status of federation that is really not where the implementation stands.
I say remove it. Like provide a good pointer at the top level where you would normally have found federation, and just say, go here, completely off the doc site. There you can find archive docs for older versions for people who are still wanting to play with the alpha thing, and an explanation as to what's going on. But the current status quo, where any user who discovers the doc site and happens to discover the Federation docs, essentially they will not understand what's going on. There's not enough information to derive, oh, this is an alpha thing and there's something else coming that I should probably wait for.
Okay, I tend to agree as well. Irfan?
Yeah, I mean, so far, like, see, one point that you mentioned that K8s space, most of it is tending towards GA as of now. But there are items which are probably beta, and I'm not sure if there are items which might be new or alpha or that kind of stuff. So documentation can reflect that this particular feature or item is alpha or beta or that kind of stuff. I don't think if it is specified explicitly in the documentation that this is an alpha feature or that kind of stuff, then users would have a problem. So my suggestion would still be that we do a gradual shift rather than just simply archive all the documents. Or, I mean, if there is a better way of doing that, or there is, like Maru suggested, that remove and archive to some location, and then there should be some pointer in the existing docs that whichever users are using that ideally should refer to this location. That kind of stuff might also work, but I'm not clear
My
on that.
suggestion would be moving the docs, and on the top of every single page of the now archived docs, there'd be like, warning, this is alpha and due to be replaced, or something like very explicit and concise, so that every time you're looking at a page in this documentation, there's no ambiguity as to what you're looking at. I mean, I've seen this in other versions where like it's an old version of a documentation, and rather than, it looks like if you were to not have some sort of big warning, you could easily get confused and be like, oh, this is the current docs, and no, it's 3 versions behind, and if I pay attention to this, I'm in trouble. That's my concern, because I've been in that position as a developer where I've stumbled across old docs via Google search and not recognized that, oh, this is for an old release and doesn't represent like the state of the art. I would like to avoid developers falling into that trap. I think, like, I kind of get that we don't want to just lose people because, like, oh, we don't have a solution for you right now. This thing is kind of EOL and we don't have something to replace it yet. But I think that it's a real risk to give people the impression that something is something stable and worth deploying, and then surprise them with, oh no, sorry, that's not reality.
Yeah, I tend to like this idea, Maru, what you're suggesting. For example, currently there is no explicit disclaimer like this in majority of the documentation that you find on Kubernetes.io. So that might be one exercise that we can do, that as one step towards migration, or call it whatever. Most of the Federation docs should have this disclaimer at the top that this is an alpha feature and we don't intend to support this in future. And we would be migrating to V2 with a proper link to where exactly the development for V2 is happening. Something like that.
I guess my suggestion was both, but I mean, even just have explicit warnings, that would be a good first step. And then maybe we can consider where to go from there. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, I tend to agree to you, Murph. Sorry, Christian, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, I don't have much experience modifying the doc site. I think it's, I'm not even sure which group maintains the Kubernetes.io doc site.
I think there's a SIG docs.
There's a SIG.
No, I have done some PRs over there, so I can try to do some stuff.
Okay, I would expect the alpha, like the alpha notice, or what we call a notice on every page, to be something that's easy to do. I don't know about.
Yeah, it should be. It should ideally be. It should ideally be one page updated and link at the top of each document, each page of Federation, something like that.
Okay.
Shouldn't be much.
I think that's like low-hanging fruit. So if we can get an explicit warning on every page in the Federation docs on that site, that'll give us time to figure out what to do next, like how easy it is to put it somewhere else so that it's not actually included in the mainline docs. But at least users will have a clear indication of what's going on when they go to the docs.
Okay, would you want a link to something else, or just a straight warning of the current state of V1?
I think probably a brief, succinct message like danger, danger, and then maybe a link to something that's a little bit more informative as to what the status is. I think that makes sense to me. And maybe that what it links to could just be a page in the Federation repo that just documents the history of the status.
Yeah, I was also gonna suggest that. So we update the README of current Federation V1, say, I mean, with more explicit details, and also probably about.
I think a separate page would be more appropriate, so that, I mean, you could link to it from the README, but also.
Yeah, that's agreeable. Okay. Where it also points users to where the current active development is happening. That happens in the Federation repo, and an explicit warning in the Kubernetes.io official docs, which basically point to Federation repo currently.
That sounds like a good first step to me.
Okay. Okay, so next we basically need this. This is about any which ways we need to do. I think this meeting is about what we need to present as a SIG in KubeCon.
Right. So I think there's two topics there. We can easily summarize the other efforts that we talked about in 10 minutes in a few slides. I think for V2, it's important to message to community lessons learned, right? Because we're showing up and we're saying, there's V1, this is the current state of things, and we're working on V2, and here's why.
Yeah, agree. And I think we probably know the lessons learned. I'd be happy to help collaborate on a slide for that material.
Yeah, me too. I don't know we necessarily have to hash it out in this meeting, but just to have kind of an action item in the next week or two to nail down communicating to the community like what we're doing and why.
Or yeah, I guess I was specifically pointing at why we're not pursuing V1.
Right.
Because that's been, I mean, that's been something that for many KubeCons we've been pointing at as a solution.
I mean, I think the short answer is supportability. And we can enumerate the reasons why it was difficult or impossible to push it to a supportable like state. Is it more than that?
I think that's a good start.
Okay.
I mean, for us, that was the main thing as well.
Yeah, I would say that was the impetus. I without getting too astronauty on V2, I think another point is that like in V2 you should be able to take only what you want. In terms of if you want the basics of putting things in multiple clusters, you can take that without taking like all of the more automated parts and build your own automated parts, or just not use automated parts. But
So,
the impetus was definitely around supportability.
so mention of previous solutions, monolithic nature, and the need to make it modular so that users could take the pieces they want and ignore the pieces they don't.
Okay. I certainly plan on mentioning the fact that we're building V2 in a Kubernetes environment where there's much more extensibility mechanism. There's a much more clear path in terms of defining what the core APIs are, or what's been called nucleus as opposed to core. I mean, we can sprinkle ideas around CRDs. I feel CRDs are increasingly well accepted as extension mechanisms. There's a breadth of tools like Cube Builder that allow easily composable operators, and I mean, I don't know if that's what you planned on using for different parts of V2, but I think these are
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, my forward-looking statement for Federation V2 is it's going to be entirely CRD based, and it's going to support Federation of CRDs. So the only reason you would write code is if you want special behavior like scheduling, but in terms of the API side, you wouldn't be writing code at all. I mean, that has huge advantages in terms of operationally, because then you just you're going to be running things in a cluster, sure, but you're not going to have a separate etcd instance. You're not going to have to use aggregation. You're not going to have to worry about any of that stuff. So to me, that's a huge win.
okay. I guess I can commit to let's see, kicking off that set of slides. I'll call lessons learned, and leading into V2, what you call forward-looking statement. Distribute that sometime late this week. I think what would also be useful, not just for messaging outbound from the SIG at KubeCon, but also for our own goals as we prototype V2 is, I hate to play the PM here, but it seems like we should have more specific deliverables, like what users can expect and when. Even if the functionality is reduced, I think that's something that is useful.
Yeah, we just spoke about developing some milestones in terms of dates and functionality yesterday in the Federation Working Group. So I think that would be that should be a requirement to have sorted out at least for the next 3-6 months before KubeCon, so that we can give some guidance there. That would probably be a very good discussion topic to devote next Wednesday's session to, if we can make some progress on understanding or just agreeing on milestones.
Yeah, I think we should keep that as a primary topic on Wednesday's agenda.
Okay, is that because Monday's used up for something else, or?
No, we have changed the meeting timing only once a week rather than twice a week from this week onwards. I did update the meeting notice. I'm not sure if everybody. Ideally, everybody should have that on the calendar as now.
Okay, then I guess before Wednesday would be a good time to have a maybe an initial set of slides. We don't have to spend time on the non-federation parts. It would be nice to have them in. I can commit to doing that. And having the lesson learns in V2 would be useful for that discussion. If you can, Irfan, have ping Quentin to see if he can make it on Wednesday. That would be useful.
Sure. I'll relay today's. I'm trying to capture some notes also, and I'll circulate to the Google group, and I'll pass on the message to him and ensure that he attends Wednesday's meeting.
Okay.
One more point. Does it make sense? Like Ivan a week or two ago could actually give a small demo on what current development is. We might actually have a more mature demo or a more workable demo by KubeCon. So that might be also possible. I mean, if that makes sense, we can give that also some time can be used to demo the V2 functionality.
Okay, can you describe what the demo does, or what you think?
So, yeah. So rather than what it does now, I think around KubeCon we should be able to, for example, in the previous KubeCon, I think the Austin one, one of us did a functionality demo which described the cross-cluster service discovery in some way locally. I mean, setting it up locally. So something similar. I am not sure if we'll be able to complete that cross-cluster service discovery part by then, but whatever is complete, we should be able to do that. For example, splitting a deployment into multiple clusters or that kind of stuff. I mean, nonsense of the same could be fleshed out later also, but one or two of the existing features which would be completed by KubeCon.
Okay, I'm hearing two things, right? There's workloads, which is one thing, which seems to be more of what I heard from Red Hat working on. And now you're talking about services, which is exposing those workloads. You're saying that demo would have both?
So
no. So okay, go ahead.
Yeah, to clarify, what is meant by workloads is, in general, putting a single resource into multiple clusters, possibly overriding certain parts of that resource in specific clusters. So that applies to replica sets, for example, as well as Kubernetes services and deployments. Does that clear things up for you, Christian?
Yeah, but it seems to me, based on this is my interpretation of what the real value of this work is so far in V2. It's the fact that specifically for the audience, I would narrow in on what it means, what overriding means. And specifically, it means that the end user does not have to write any code to control that behavior, that we will have APIs for them to essentially plug into. Right,
yeah. So the demo that has been given a couple times around the current state of what exists today shows like replica sets, config maps, secrets being placed into multiple clusters and having, for example, removing one of the clusters from the list of where things should be placed and showing that, hey, all these resources go away, then add it back in. Hey, look, they're back in that cluster. Change the replica set count in a particular cluster and say, hey, look at this. In cluster X, we have 3 now instead of 5. that kind of thing. I know that Ivan and I think Shashi also are both interested in adding support for Kubernetes services in this manner. Just to put a fine point on exactly what exists today and where the immediate next steps are. That seems to me like it would be a compelling demo to illustrate the form and function of Federation V2 in terms of what people can expect from a very basic standpoint. Do people think that kind of demo would be valuable in the SIG update?
It's, so far, your description of it seems valuable. I'm just not hearing what's different in V2 about it compared to V1.
So the difference is that in V2, there are distinct resources for the different pieces involved. So in V1, you would have basically expressed this information on something that looked exactly like a V1 replica set or a V1 secret, et cetera. In V2, there are distinct API resources that correspond to, this is the basic definition of this resource. This is how it should be altered in a specific cluster when it's placed into that cluster. And these are the clusters where it should be. And there are, excuse me, those present as API groups and resources that are very clearly demarcated as being related to Federation and are versioned distinctly from their V1 counterparts in Kubernetes. So for example, all of these resources that we talked about are at the V1 Alpha 1 level, which is another distinction to make between V2 and V1, is that the versioning that we're able to achieve in V2 because we have these distinct resources is clearly demarcated as being the version of the Federation rather than being potentially bound up in looking very much like vanilla Kubernetes. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think it's useful to have this discussion. Parts of this I understood. It's good to hear it from you. To re-summarize, I see it as the kind of the vagaries of workload distribution are not buried in annotations as they were in V1, where API was preserved as is and are now in distinct resources that we can evolve over time.
Yeah, so the also fairly fundamental difference is that as a SIG or sub-project of the SIG, the folks working on Federation are very interested, as Maru touched on earlier, in being able to add support for new types without writing code. So that's another pretty significant distinction between V2 and V1, is that in the long term, the goal is to get to a place where for example, if you have a CRD that you want to add support to Federation for, excuse me, that you should be able to extend Federation by creating some new CRDs and not writing any code. It's not super clear at this point whether we'll be able to demonstrate that at KubeCon, but it's a distinction that we should draw between V2 and V1.
I think the chances are pretty good we'll be able to demo that by KubeCon.
Okay, I think that sounds very compelling. Kind of puts a stake in the ground as to why we're moving in a different direction. So even if it's not demoable, I think what we're talking about now is something we can definitely speak to. So that's encouraging, at least from my perspective. Now, I guess the only thing that we need to kind of agree upon is we have two slots. They're, I think, 30 and 40 minutes each. One is a SIG update that can be fairly generic through slides. And I think we can dive into more of the Federation details as part of what's called the deep dive, which is that session. And I'm happy to let anyone else who has more experience with the demo do that work, who will be present at KubeCon. But if no, I can present as well.
So Lindsay from our team at Red Hat is going to be present, and I don't want to put her on the spot, but I kind of just did. Lindsay, what do you think? Are you up for doing the demo at KubeCon?
I could attempt it, I guess.
I would say that this is something roughly analogous to walking a tightrope at the circus. You don't do it without a net under you. So if your demo crashes and burns, we can have a video backup.
Right. When would this be? That's the only.
Like which day of KubeCon?
Yes.
It's look for let's see, multi-cluster deep dive.
So Tuesday, Wednesday?
I'm not sure.
I think it's on day 2, 5th. I mean, I vaguely remember.
May 3, Thursday.
Okay. Sure. Why not?
That's the spirit.
It's a great opportunity to show your work.
Okay.
All right, so far we're talking about workloads, and then services would be the services portion of the demo that would yet to be determined, but if that shows up, this would be your fund. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I was just writing something. Can you
Right,
repeat that question, please?
So we've been having a discussion for the last 10 minutes or so about workloads and how they differ between V1 and V2. Lindsay plans on demoing that capability. But earlier, Irfan, you also spoke to services, specifically cross-cluster service discovery. Is that something that you think you would want to demo in that session as well?
Yeah, I hope that it will be complete by KubeCon, and if that is so, then ideally I should be able to demo that.
Okay, if that's the case, can you send me a blurb about what you think you can demo? Blurb is like 2 sentences because today is the final day for us to submit essentially a paragraph on what we intend to do in the deep dive session. So this is what will be put on the website for, to give people a description of what they can expect in that session.
Okay, let me do that. Right after this meeting, I'll try to write 2 sentences about the same.
Okay, I feel I can put something together for the workloads portion, but if somebody from Red Hat wants to steer me in a certain direction, or I can send you what I write and you can vet it if you want. That works too. If I don't hear anything, I'll do the latter. Latter it is. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I thought we would spend more time on milestones for Federation V2, but if we're deferring that to next Wednesday, that's fine too. I don't have any other topics.
Is the charter going to be something mentioned in the SIG update or not?
I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe for Paul.
I don't know. Do people think that it merits mentioning at KubeCon that we're working on a charter?
I mean, I would mention the SIG update.
Yeah, I think it bears a mention, but probably not a huge amount of discussion since, honestly, in my own personal opinion, having a charter is mostly just a move of content that used to be under the README of different SIGs in community.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was a big deal or not. Like, I just saw this go by, so it sounded important. Whatever.
It does sound extremely important. I am not sure that it, in reality, is as important as it's made to sound.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's just a formalization of giving everyone's sort of readmes in the same line.
Yeah, I think that I think it's I think the concept exists so that you know you have to write something down, because the format of the charter is not prescribed in any way. But in my own personal opinion, as just an observer, I would say that that's the main importance, is that we shouldn't have SIGs that have no definition.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Any other concerns, questions?
Nope. So, yeah, one last thing. So, who all are going to be there at this KubeCon? Christian, I know that you would be, and I saw Madhu's and Nikhil's name in one or two of the presentations.
You know.
Are they?
Jew is not going.
From our side, it would be myself, Madhu, Nikhil, and
No, I thought Madhu is not going.
oh no, okay. Then Nikhil, Greg, and Christian.
Okay. And Lindsay from Red Hat. Anybody else? Okay, from Huawei, Quinton, and I would be there.
Okay, Quentin, Irfan. Can I, Irfan, we talked about docs, so like I'll be working on slides for the update. Can I assign you the docs updates, or at least
Sure.
pass on the PR, and then we can agree on. I mean, put whatever wording in there, and then we'll discuss over the PR.
Sure, I'll try to put up a PR before the next meeting.
Okay.
Should be okay, right?
Yep.
And did anybody else take any kind of notes for today's meeting? If not, whatever rough I have, I can probably send it out, and people can add to it if I have missed something.
Yeah, I took some notes. I will.
Then what I'll do, Christian, I'll just IM whatever I wrote to you. If there is something which you haven't captured, you can maybe useful, maybe not.
Okay, I'll put it in the Federation document, and just mark that it was a one-off meeting.
Sure. Okay. That also works. Okay. Okay, guys. Then I guess next the suggestion is to meet next Wednesday, right? Or Christian, did you suggest that we meet discussing the same topic as today some other time?
No, that's all from me.
Okay. I think next week we'll have the SIG multi-cluster meeting also. Tuesday. We can have this discussion on Tuesday then. Yeah.
Correct.
Cool. Okay. See you guys.
All right. Thanks all.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you, everybody.
Bye.